Turn to chapter 9. Chapter 9, verse 5. Jesus says, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Turn over to chapter 12. This is our last one. Chapter 12, verse 35. Jesus therefore said to them, for a little while longer, the light is among you. Walk while you have the light, that darkness may not overtake you. He who walks in darkness does not know where he goes. While you have the light, believe in the light, in order that you may become sons of the light. And Jesus is speaking and he's teaching, and it's interesting how he shares this, because the reality of it is Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light, and he came to reveal the Father. He came to demonstrate the love of the Father. He came to show us God, because, my friends, man did not see God on his own. Man did not look for God on his own. Man did not experience God on his own. It was something that God had to initiate. It was something that God had to work out and God had to bring about. Now Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, is looking there. He's teaching. His disciples are there. And he says, you are the light of the world. He says, this thing is changing. Jesus said, while I am in the world, walk with me, because you're walking with the light. Believe in the light. But in Matthew chapter 5, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. And he says, therefore let your light so shine that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. Let it shine. Let your light shine. What the Jesus that's in you, the presence of the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ in you, let it shine. And it's an amazing thing. There is no way you can't say, well, that's nice, it's encouraging, but this is a command that the light that's in you has to shine. That means Jesus has to come out of you. Jesus has to flow out of you. It has to spill out of you. Now, it's interesting. There used to be a donut. Well, I guess they've opened it again, but there was a donut shop down on 71st Street by the Cleaners, right before you get to Evans Road. And it was donut and barbecue, and they closed for a while. But I used to go to that one, and we would drive over there with the kids, and we'd get. And I love to get a maple bar, Long John, but I like to get the Bavarian filled inside. You know what I mean? Yeah, you like that? I like rich food, but anyway. So they don't put the Bavarian in until you order it, because they've got cream and chocolate and Bavarian and all that. So I asked them, "Can you fill this?" And what's amazing with that donut is that it would be filled so much with that Bavarian cream that the bread would actually rip apart and expose the Bavarian cream. And I thought about that. We're supposed to be so filled up with the presence of Christ in our life that it just comes out of us. And you think, well, how does it come? We're just supposed to ooze on other people? No, that's not what I mean. It's not supposed to be this mushy, oozy stuff. What's interesting is what he says in Matthew chapter 5. Look there with me. I got my ribbon there, so I turn back. Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light so shine before men. Let it shine in such a way that they see what? That they see what? Yeah, good works. Now this is difficult, because you say, wait a minute. Now, let my light shine in such a way that they see good works, and that causes them to glorify God. You say, what does that mean? I mean, because we've always been told, I've always been taught, that I'm supposed to tell people about Jesus. Here it says, let your light shine. Let Jesus shine in your life in such a way that your good works cause them to glorify God. You know, it makes me think about it. You can listen, don't turn. But it makes me think about John chapter 5, verse 19. In John 5 it says, Jesus answered them, saying, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, unless it is something he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, these things the Son also does in like manner. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself is doing, and the Father will show him greater works than these, so that you will marvel. Now, what did Jesus just say? You're going to see the works the Father's doing, because I'm going to do those works, and it's going to cause you to marvel. That's what he said. And in John 14, Philip said, teacher, show us the Father. He says, have I been with you so long? If you've seen me, guess who you've seen? The Father. It's interesting that if the world wants to see Jesus, where should they look? At his followers. They should look at his students. And they should see him because he comes out of us. We are doing the things that he does. There are works coming out of us that come from Jesus. You know, there's a tension here because we know from teaching that faith is really what it takes to change our lives. Paul says it this way, and he says, for it is by grace you are saved through faith, in that not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. Our works don't bring us faith. I mean, our works don't bring us life, and our works, I mean, in the Old Testament, it qualifies our works as filthy rags. And here Jesus says, let your light shine before men in such a way, if they see your good works, they'll glorify your Father who's in heaven. You know, if we shine, if the light is shining in us, then then our good works will cause people to glorify God. You know, and there's this tension between those two. And we err on the side of caution. And we don't want to go down the works path. But my friend, if you neglect the path of deeds, you neglect Jesus. It's an amazing thing. All you got to do is go look at his teaching. Turn over to Matthew chapter 7, just another page there. Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. You know verse 24 through 27, don't you? The wise man built his house upon the rock. She knows the song. That's good. That's that verse. That's those verses right there. The difference between the wise man and the fool was both of them heard the words, and one did them and one didn't. Both of them heard the teaching of the Sermon on the Mount, and one obeyed them and one didn't. He's coming for you. All right. And that is the difference. The difference is one would do those words and one wouldn't. You go to Matthew chapter 25. Don't turn. You know the passage. We've talked about it lately. And Jesus said he separated the sheep from the goats. And he said, I was in prison and you visited me. I was sick and you helped me. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. He said, you know, if you do this to the least of these, you've done it unto me. What's he talking about? Works. He's saying, here is your doing. In Revelations chapter 2 and 3, you know what's interesting? Every one of the churches in Revelations 2 and 3, you know what he says? I know your deeds. Could you guess that? He says, he doesn't say, I know your faith or I know your doctrine. He says, I know your deeds. Now, not saying you shouldn't have faith and you shouldn't have right doctrine, but my friend, if you can have right faith and right doctrine, if you're not doing the things of Jesus, guess what? Your faith and doctrine are ineffective. And I think that's why he comes to this place where he says, let your light shine before men in such a way that they see your good works and they glorify your Father. If you've seen Jesus, you've seen the Father because he did what the Father does. If you see a follower of Christ, then you should see Jesus because they do what the Father does. How should it shine? You know, by actions alone? By words alone? May it never be. You know, but in the body of Christ today, there are two camps of thought. And it's interesting. There are two camps of thought. One camp of thought is, if you're a believer, you've got to help people. You've got to meet their needs. We're talking about going to Bella Monacer. We're ministering to the poor. We have a desire to do that. And there's a train of thought that there is a justice in the world that has to come about socially. And you can call it social justice. And those who've gone off the deep end in this thought have said they call it the social gospel. That we're gonna raise people up out of poverty and out of their emptiness, and we're gonna bring them to Christ. There's that one camp. And then there's the other camp, and they say, no, we've got to preach the truth. We've got to tell people the truth. We've got to get them to believe. No matter what we do to help them, they've got to believe. You know what the solution to both of those camps' problems is? Jesus. While both camps are right to a degree, but where they go wrong is when they neglect the other.